Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit of the WoW podcast, blueplease.on Welcome back to the Stonecore. This is part 2, and this is mostly going to be boss rushing because there isn't a lot of trash between this one, Ozruk, and the last guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some wipes right here as well as successful attempts. I wouldn't really call this a wipe-a-thon because it wasn't as ridiculous as the first boss. And there's not as much to learn right here. Now, Ozruk depends almost entirely on the skill of your tank. However, initially we didn't know this, so we were actually overthinking the fight. So here's what he does. First thing he'll do is he'll cast an Elementium Bulwark. Now, usually this also puts up a Spell Reflection Shield. As you can see right there, I got the Spell Reflect, and it will cause a dot to stack up on anyone that melees him. It's not reliable, though. It's a proc chance on the dot. What he'll also do is he will paralyze you, as you can see, and that's global. That'll hit anyone regardless of where they are. He'll then do a Spike Barrage, which will kill you, unquestionably. He also has this Ground Slam, which will also kill you. You can't outgear that. That just hit me for 150 to about 160,000 damage. So, yeah, you're not outgearing that. You're dead if you get hit by that. However, we were wondering, well, what's happening here? The Paralyze can be broken if you get damaged. So what we tried to do is we tried to get into melee range so that we could stack that dot on us. Now, you see there, it actually worked, but we were overthinking this. This is not how it's supposed to work. So we did a few more wipes and we're trying to figure it out, and then we realized that the Spike Barrage that comes directly after the Paralyze can actually be outranged. So if you have a ranged DPS group, you shouldn't have any problems with this. Now, you might be wondering, oh, well, I'm running with a melee DPS group, so this sucks. Not necessarily. Because the idea of having that stacking dot is that as a meleeer, you can stack the dot on you. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it will break you out of the Paralyze. Then all you need to do is run out of line of sight. So you fight him right here between those two pillars, and when he does his Spike Barrage, you go around the corner. Now, our tank had to practice quite a lot here because it was incredibly intense for him. He was having to dodge those ground slams, he was having to make sure that he got the hit in to get the dot on him, and then he had to line of sight before it killed him. Now, the problem is, he's a Death Knight, and as opposed to a lot of other tanking classes, he doesn't have a reliable way to get that dot on him. He can't swing as quickly. This is coming from him, by the way, and he is a tank from the guild Aspire, who are a very high-ranked guild on the EU side of things. So he was giving the feedback that in order to get that dot, he was having to swing at it, and sometimes he wouldn't get the dot, and it was unreliable. However, we used our Paladin right here to use Blessing of Protection on him once. We also had him bubble out of the second Paralyze, and we also used some cooldowns as well. Now, a warrior tank and a druid tank, I can't imagine are going to have too many problems. Melee DPS won't have any problems either, because they can hit him, stack the dot up, and that will break him out of the Paralyze, and then you just nip around the corner, and the Spike Barrage isn't going to hit you. But yeah, like I said, this is all about tank execution. The healer and the ranged DPS can outrange the Spike Barrage, so they don't have to do anything. That said, it's a really good fight, and the tank said he really enjoyed it once he got the hang of it. He said it was very intense, and it's always nice to be sort of the linchpin of the group beyond what you usually are. I mean, the tank is always the linchpin, but in that case, the tank is the sole reason that you wipe in that fight. So there's a lot of pressure put on the tank, and those wanting a challenge, who like their tanky to be a little more interesting than just standing there hitting him, well, there you go. That fight is for you. Now, we've got to kill 101 of these followers here, but while I'm doing that, let me explain a few things. Firstly, I turned off buff consolidation, which is why you can see all my buffs at the top there, because people are dumb and don't understand concepts that I explain to them, so I don't expect them to actually understand this either. Also, why have you got Blessing of Might, Totalbiscuit? Well, that will be because Blessing of Might is now being combined with Blessing of Wisdom. Simple as that. It is the same buff now. Right, the last boss. She's a little bit tricky, so like I said before, I'm going to show you the first fight on normal speed, and then I'm going to speed up the rest of the wipes and then show you the successful kill. Now, she was a little bit intense in the normal mode, and they've stacked her up quite nicely in the heroic. Now, we started off not using any cooldowns just to try and learn the fight. First thing she'll do is she'll come in with a shield. She'll have 75% damage reduction while she does that. Then she will start casting Void Zones on random members of the raid and start summoning ads. She will also use a Force Grip. Now, the Force Grip causes you to take a massive amount of damage, but it will target the tank. It also means the tank isn't generating any threat, which is a little bit of a problem. It can be counterspelled and it can be interrupted, so use them and be very quick about using them. Now, when she goes into phase 2, she will float then, she will throw 3 rocks at you. These rocks will instantly kill you if you get hit by it. You'll see there's a mark on the ground that you can avoid. However, as I discovered, it's not just the mark on the ground. If you stand in the flight path of it, as it comes down, it's like it has some kind of trajectory. If you stand in the way of it as it passes through you, you're dead, regardless. It's not just a land-on-the-ground projectile. It will kill you if you get hit by it as it passes through. Now, once it does that, you get back into phase 1, and things get really hectic because there's a lot of ads. They're hitting very hard indeed. As you can see, our healer is struggling to keep the tank up at this point, and we have changed over to a pally because, sadly, Mad Jack of Wraith was unable to complete this with us. He had to go to a birthday party, his birthday party, so happy birthday to Mad Jack from Wraith. Some people, idiots, I might add, were saying in the video description for the Wipeathon for Core Boris, oh, that healer sucks. Mad Jack is in a guild called Wraith. Wraith is the 7th best guild in the world, according to WoWprogress.com. They are the 4th best guild in Europe, and the #1 French guild on the planet. Now, Mad Jack does not suck. That fight is just hard. It's as simple as that. Right. This fight is not as hard as the first one, but it's certainly very challenging and very hectic. So, we decided we're going to vary things up a bit. We're going to try and make sure that we can control the placement of the void zones. So how do we do that, you might ask? Well, we're going to go in here and we're going to try and stay in a vague sort of shape so that we can create a barrier. You see, we're jumping along there, we're moving along, and we're stacking a little bit on top of the paladin. There, you see, we're creating a barrier of void zones so that the mobs that come in from the side are running into the void zones and they're dying. The problem is that the void zones shrink every time they kill a mob, so you can't rely on them to be a permanent barrier. You have to recreate the barrier. Now, we're into phase 2 now. We've pretty much got control of what's going on. We're not getting hit by the rocks, which is very important indeed. She goes back down there, and we are back into phase 1. There's the Force Grip. Easily counterspell it. You do need 2 forms of interrupt, because it does happen too often. Unless you have a rogue, in which case, well, kick will be off cooldown. You see, I couldn't interrupt that. We didn't have another form of interrupt, because the Warlock's pet had died from the void zones. Yeah. That's a little bit of a risk. So that ended up killing the tank, and it's game over. Force Grip does a huge amount of damage. You cannot let it go all the way through. And that's not even counting the fact that the threat reduction caused by that is intense, and the tank can end up losing aggro on the boss, and then splat, your entire group is very dead indeed. Some people might be wondering, by the way, why my talent thing is blinking, and the OCD guys are furious about it. Well, it's a bug. Get over it. Yes, I have all of my talent points spent in my primary spec. The other possibility is that my secondary spec doesn't have talent points in it. I don't think I have a secondary spec right now, so get over it. My God. People get so obsessed over these tiny little details. Right. Let's do it again, shall we? We're going to try and sort out placement. We're spread out a little bit right here, so we've got our void zone there. That's a good place for it, because they come from the side and they come from the back, so that's where you want it. In that case, though, not ideal. We were a little bit all over the place. In our final attempt, I'll show you exactly how we do the placement, and this should be helpful for you. Now, we have loads of ads, and we do have to be so careful. The problem with these rocks is that because there's so much AoE all over the place, you can't necessarily see the little patch on the ground. As you saw right there, the rock just squished our tank and our healer. Because there was so much AoE and there were so many ads running around that little purple circle on the ground, you don't see it. I would recommend that you angle your camera so that you can see the rock coming towards you. You do have plenty of time to get out of the way, but if you are focusing on what's on the ground, then it can become a problem. Right, now here's a better attempt. This is where we are deliberately stacking on top of the paladin. So you get one void zone there, which happened on the pet, and we're going to stand here, and our next void zone's going to appear around here. There we go. So there's one. We move a few steps to the right, but watch out. Don't stack on top of her, because if you do, you'll get hit by the energy shield for about 40,000, and it's got a knockback effect. So that is not helpful at all. Okay, dodge some rocks, shall we? There we go. Second rock out of the way, no problem at all. And there's the third one coming in. We avoid it very nicely indeed. Bunch everything up, and then annihilate the ads. Okay, we're back into phase 1, and our placement is not bad, actually. That's a good place for the void zones to be. We'll move around here slightly. There we go. See that barrier we've managed to create there? That's really effective. That, on the other hand, isn't, but you do have a little bit of time to get out of the way. Unfortunately, the pet died once again. Our Warlock at this point recommended putting the pet on passive, because that's really the only way to reliably keep it out of the way. Now, as it turns out, we do manage to survive quite well here, but we don't get the kill, simply because, well, our healer is running out of mana there. We've lost a DPS already. We've lost one of our interrupts, so that could be a massive problem. Now, here is how you actually do it. Watch this. This is what I call a bit of execution right here. So we are manipulating where those void zones are going to appear. Stacking, move to the left. Stack, move to the left. We annihilated an entire pack right there using that void zone. It's very good. That's a great placement for it. We actually lure them into the void zone to get extra kills. So that's very effective. Now, in come the rocks once again. Gotta be careful. Really, really careful. It's so tricky to actually see them coming because you're focused so hard on these ads. I actually ended up getting bopped right there because I ended up pulling aggro on a lot of the ads. Honestly, you've just got to kite as much as you can. And recommendation for measures right here. I don't have it on my bar right now. This is the point where Frost Nova would come in handy. Now, we screwed up our force grip right here because we both used our interrupt on the first one at the same time. You've really got to be careful with your rotation there. So our stuff was on cooldown by this point, and the tank ended up eating all of it. But he survived thanks to the deft healing of the Paladin. Now, we do have a reasonable barrier going on right there, so that's good. So I'm going to blink through that. That's going to force all of those guys to run straight through. It weakens them, it kills them. It's really effective. Now, we've transitioned back into Phase 2. We've got to be really careful. Now, watch out. Those rocks have a larger AoE than they are indicated on the ground. Thankfully, because I have a cheesy Fire Mage tactic, I am able to survive that. Anyone else would have been horribly dead. Watch out for pulling aggro. This phase gets really, really hectic. Use Curtain of Frost. Use Frost Nova. Use anything you possibly can. If you're a hunter, slowing traps, really nice. Earthbind Totems for Shaman, anything you can to slow them down and control the ads. But we do it. It's scrappy, but that fight is great. It's really entertaining. It's really hectic. And look at that. That's a disgracefully good offhand. Right now, actually, I think that is the best offhand in the game. The only one that we've managed to find otherwise is the Book of Origination in normal mode. Halls of Origination. I assume there's probably a heroic version of it, but yeah, that thing is sick. Right. Well, folks, that is the Stonecore Heroic. What do I think about the Stonecore Heroic? It is excellent. It is a really good heroic dungeon. The trash is entertaining. The bosses, with the exception of the second one that needs to be tuned up a bit, are really good. The mechanics are awesome across the board. Compared to the normal mode, it's a completely different dungeon. Unbelievably good. No doubt the bosses are going to get easier once we get things like bigwigs and deadly boss mods in there and people understand the mechanics more. Obviously, we were learning this from scratch. There's a little bit of trailblazing right here. We had no idea what was coming. We worked out the entire fight with no knowledge beforehand. There's no boss killers. There's no tank spot for this kind of stuff. So, yeah. That's it. That is how you do it. And it's so, so good. And I really hope Blizzard don't change it, honestly. Maybe, as a cynical person, I should be thinking, well, of course Blizzard are going to change it because people suck and they'll complain, and they'll whine, but I don't know. I've been gaming now for 22 years. And if I've learned anything in the time that I've been gaming, it's that gamers in general will rise to the occasion. They might grump, they might whine, they might scream for mercy, but out of a simple matter of pride, they will rise to the occasion if they are forced to do so. That's what I would hope the player base does. That's what I did. That's what I want to continue to do. I want to be a better player. This content helps me be a better player. It's as simple as that. That's what's entertaining to me. That's what's challenging. So there you go, folks. Stonecore Heroic. Excellent design. My name's been Totalbiscuit, and I will see you next time.